Hi guys, this is Brent. I'm back for with a Fantasy Football Guide live. Moving on from week two into week three, we got some interesting matchups, and I kind of pulled up some notes that I wanted to talk about today. I just want to get started with we'll talk about the specifically the Green Bay and Cincinnati matchup. That one's going to be really interesting, considering that. Eddie Lacy is ruled out at this point. He's probably not going to play. Even if he's listed as questionable or probable coming up to the game, he probably still won't play. It wouldn't be a good idea. Anytime somebody, has a setback and gets a concussion, you want to make sure that you take the proper precautions to make sure that he's okay before coming back. And so James Starks will fill in his role as starting running back. And James Starks did really good last week. But he also played against a very subpar defense. Not to mention that Aaron Rodgers did throw for a bazillion yards and I think 4 touchdowns. So that kind of opened up the rushing game, which is what they want to do. They want to do that in Green Bay. They don't want to be one dimensional, which they have been for, or seemingly have been for many years. Um, but I would not. I probably would not play Starks unless you absolutely have to. If you had Lacy and Lacy was your starter and you got to play Starks, I understand. Um, but they're going to get Cincinnati this week, and they're not an easy defense to throw or rush against. They're pretty well rounded with their players there. But Aaron Rodgers obviously is going to be a for sure start. You're not going to worry about him, and you're not going to really worry about his receivers either. He has good targets to throw to. But as far as the rushing game, I would probably wait another week and see how Starks actually does. I don't think that he'll actually take over the starting position over Eddie Lacy once Lacy returns, because Lacy seemed pretty productive when he was playing, but. Um, on the other hand, on the other side of the ball, though, Cincinnati, one player that I think is going to do excellent this week, and it's not just because he had 2 touchdowns last week, one on rushing, one receiving, um, but Giovanni Bernard. He looks amazing. I watched some videos of him from his college days, obviously highlights, so obviously it's only going to be when he does well in those videos, but man, he looks amazing. I think that he's going to tear it up. This guy is going against a defense that is absolutely horrid. Let's be honest. They have Clay Matthews, and that's about it. They are giving up a ton of yards. Let's see here. I believe that Green Bay has given up. They're in the middle of the road for rushing, but that's not what I would be worried about as far as that goes. It's going to be in the receiving game. Giovanni Bernard is a dual threat running back, but it's going to be more into the passing game. And Green Bay has given up the third most passing yards, so obviously that's going to open up for AJ Green. AJ Green is going to have a field day with this guy, and then Giovanni Bernard is going to be the underneath guy, kind of like what you've been seeing, like with the Reggie Bush and the Matt Forte. Um, Type of plays. CJ Spiller was supposed to be that. He's not doing very well. He was supposed to have been doing that. Um, but look for those guys to have some really big games going into there. Um, Switching gears a little bit. So you saw San Francisco just get trounced by Seattle. Seattle has a great defense. When that defense shows up, and in most weeks it does, they just go fire on all cylinders and they go headstrong and they completely carry the team through. Granted, Marshawn Lynch had a monster day too, but who didn't? Russell Wilson. It's a sad day for Russell Wilson owners to see your team put up that many points, but he not really be much a part of it. I think that the same thing's gonna happen this week. I would not be high on Russell Wilson against Jacksonville, and you go, but Brent, Jacksonville is horrible on defense. They're horrible on rush defense. They actually have only given up the second most passing yards this season. And granted, that's only 2 games, but second to Seattle, they're only 60 yards behind Seattle in as far as how much they've given up. But the rush defense, they've given up the second most rushing yards. Um, And so I would look for Marshawn Lynch to have another huge day. I wouldn't doubt if he easily breaks 100 and gets two more touchdowns. I don't know how much he's going to get with the passing game. He's always kind of, it's a hit or miss as far as like how many receptions he's going to get, but that's not why you drafted him. Let's be honest. Even if you are in a PPR league, that's not why you drafted Marshawn Lynch. You drafted him for his power force, his ability to get into the end zone. He's a he's a touchdown hog. That's just what he does. Um, so it again until Russell Wilson starts to show more composure in the pocket. It's tough because a lot of people picked him to have him be the starter, um, and maybe he has a good game, but the stats just don't seem to be in his favor for this week. Let's see. Going to an interesting game with Kansas City and Philadelphia. Now that game, I think, isn't going to be one-sided at all. Andy Reid's going against his previously coached team. Now he's with Kansas City. He was with Philadelphia. That's in Philly, so that's going to be the crowd is going to be nuts. Um, I mean, what could happen is Philadelphia could blow out Kansas City, but I don't see it happening. Kansas City is much too good for that this year. I think that it's going to be very back and forth. There's going to be a very high octane both sides. Um, I wouldn't play either defense in that matchup, but I would play every offensive player, every key offensive player. Um, Alex Smith, it's tough to say. Sure, I can plug him in because he's probably a backup for most people, but you got Jamal Charles, Dwayne Bowe, you got um, LaShawn McCoy, and Dijon Jackson. They're all gonna have. I think they're all gonna do very, very well today. Um, and as far as like tight ends like Brent Selleck or you know they might do well. Michael Vick's gonna run around, but they're key players. They're running backs, wide receivers. They're gonna do well in this game. It's just gonna be very high emotion. They're probably gonna make. Andy Reid might go for things that he may not do against other teams, even though he's not going to express that he you know, doesn't still have some kind of grudge or, something against that. He probably still does. It wasn't a very uh, forbidding departure. Um, so that look for that game to be very, very high scoring. Uh, Another player that I wanted to mention that is going to do well this year, or well this year, but this next game is going to be Adrian Peterson. Um, this guy had, the very first game he had that one big run and was like, I'm back, like look at me, I'm awesome. And then he got shut down against Detroit. He goes into Chicago and manages to get 100 yards rushing on, I think he had 22 to 25 carries, somewhere around there. That's not Adrian Peterson numbers. That's not good for him. He did not get into the end zone. He fumbled, and he was very angry about that, about with himself. He doesn't fumble much anymore since a couple years ago when he had that fumbling issue, but he fixed that problem. And look for him to have a huge game against Cleveland. The last time they faced the Cleveland Browns, he just ran all over them. Um, but Minnesota Vikings defense have been fairly shaky, but they've also been fairly productive uh, as far as putting up fantasy points. I would look for the Minnesota Vikings to shut down Cleveland if you have them. If they're out on the waiver wire, pick them up. They are a must start this week. They're going against the third string quarterback, Cleveland quarterback. I don't know his first name, but his last name is Hoyer. Brandon Whedon is not starting. Brandon Whedon is not good. If Brandon Whedon is starting ahead of this guy is obviously not up to snuff. He's going to be rusty coming into there. It's probably his first. I don't know if it's his first start. Don't quote me on that, but it probably is. I don't know much about him. Um, but I would look for the Vikings to just go wild on them, and they're going to get up early, and they're going to shut down Trent Richardson. I would not play him. He is not the style of back that Reggie Bush and Matt Forte are. That's what beat the Vikings. They're able to contain the big receiver, Calvin Johnson. They didn't do as good of a job against Brandon Marshall. And they gave up a bunch of yards and touchdowns to Reggie Bush, Drake Bell, um, Matt Forte. But Trent Richardson is more of a power back. He's more of a downfield runner. He has some speed, but he's not elusive and agile like those guys are. He doesn't do the same thing. He catches some passes, but if Cleveland tries to do the same thing with him that the Detroit and Chicago did with their running back, I don't think they're going to be near as successful. They might have one or two good plays, but it's not going to be something that I would bank on. Trent Richardson probably will have another poor game. He's already had two slow starts. He has yet to get into the end zone, and it's really too bad about that. But you know, it's sometimes that's the way it goes. He's going to take a little bit for their offense to start clicking. They don't have much. They have Jordan Cameron. He, was a shiny spot, but I wouldn't look for him to do very well either. Even though the Vikings have had trouble with the tight ends. They gave up a touchdown to the rookie in Detroit, and they gave up a bunch to Martellus Bennett. Um, but that if I was to start anybody from Cleveland, it would be Cameron. That would be the one player that I would say go ahead and start. But um, Richardson, you're probably going to have to start because you don't have another option, which is understandable. And let's see. As far as wrapping this up, I'm not probably not going to go over too many other players. Those are some ones that kind of stuck out to me that I want to highlight. Um, I I'm not too high on Tom Brady this week. Um, in my league, I believe I'd probably be starting Julian Edelman just because of the receptions. I'm in a PPR league, and I think he's just a monster as far as like just catching all those passes and great hands. Tom Brady loves him. And he doesn't have much of another option to throw to. Gronk is still out. Amendola is going to be out. Um, and so there's not much else, but you got Revis Island sitting over there. The Tampa Bay defense just in general is pretty good. It is in New England, so that's a plus. I'm a huge fan for having players play when they're home. I think that's just a there's just it just makes so much of a difference. Teams are going to win more at home. They're going to put up the points. They're going to have the morale boost from the crowd, um, and that stuff it can matter. Not going to be heavy on it, but you know that's that's something that I definitely like to see when I'm making a player picks is them playing at home, though that's not where my decision gets fully based on. But I think that I'm going to wrap it up with that, guys. You know, it's going to be an interesting week. It always is. There's always good games, um, and we'll see how things go from here and see if some of my predictions end up being right. But all right, guys. Talk to you later. This is Brent on Fantasy Football Guide Live signing out.